today we're going to speak to somebody that you all love, and it brings you back to your childhood. Some of you are young and you're seeing it again now. And I'm going to do my best to pronounce your name properly. Pat Mastroianni. Yay! Thank you.
Good job.
Thank you. So, can we start off with Degrassi?
Sure.
I would love to know the audition process.
First off, let me just say hi to everyone. Thank you so much for spending some time with me. I'm so flattered that we've got a good crowd here, and I'm excited to talk to all of you. You are going to have a chance to ask questions a little later, so please don't be shy. We're going to have mics brought out and give you an opportunity to ask a question. Just now I was asked, what was it like, the audition process for the Degrassi? Well, I don't know if you know this, but back in the early 80s, there was actually a show called The Kids of Degrassi that aired on the CBC. And my producer, Linda Schuyler, was a school teacher downtown, and she felt that there was no programming available to show her students in the classroom that could help teach them about life lessons and issues and topics that pertain to a junior high audience or an elementary school audience. So she came up with the idea of producing a show called The Kids of Degrassi, and she went to the CBC and said, here's my idea, here's my script, and could I, potentially produce this for a small budget and have you guys air it? They gave her the money to produce one episode. The title of that episode escapes me, but she produced the one episode. I think it was $30,000 they gave her. The CBC loved it so much they gave her enough money to do 3 more episodes. And that went on for almost 7 years until they finally produced 26 episodes over 7 years. And it was just this little after-school episodic show that they would air on the CBC. But people really, really liked it. They liked the idea of the storytelling through the kids' perspective. So what Linda did in 1986, she went back to the CBC and said, I'd really like to keep doing this show, but I'd like to start tackling some topics that deal with an older age group, maybe grade 7s or grade 6s and 7s. So she said, could I change the name of the show to Degrassi Junior High and start dealing with some more sensitive topics? And they said, great, go for it. Here's 13 episodes, run with it, see what you can do. So Linda, not being a really affiliated producer with the industry, she went out and did a local casting call in Toronto, dropping off flyers at local schools, elementary schools and high schools all around Toronto. And I think about 500 kids came out to audition for the Degrassi Junior High series, myself included. And I remember being in grade 9 and the principal going on the intercom saying, somebody from the CBC just dropped off flyers for a TV show they're producing. If you have any interest, come down and grab a flyer and you can send it in. And nobody in my classroom wanted to go and get it because, CBC, what kind of show is that? And I'm like, what? It's a great channel. But I was the only one in my entire school that filled out the form and sent it in and got an audition. And I remember Linda told me, the producer told me one day that I was the first person ever to audition for the character Joey Jeremiah. Joey, Caitlin, Snake, and Stephanie K were the 4 characters that they actually wrote before the scripts were ever written. And those were the only 4 characters they had. And Joey being one of them. She said, I was the first one to walk in to audition for the character. She liked me immediately. Her partner hated me and said, he's not very good. And she goes, but we can do something with him. We can work with him. And there was a 3-week, believe it or not, out of the 500 kids, about 30 of us were chosen for workshops. And for 3 weeks, we took these workshops with instructors, teachers, coaches after school. And we were basically being tested every day on what our capabilities were, how well could we create a character, memorize lines. And so for 3 weeks, it was almost like America's Got Talent, where people would get booted as the weeks went on. And you're like, oh my God, I got invited back for next week. Okay, good. So it was literally Canada's Got Talent before there was that show, before reality shows. And then I remember thinking, this other guy, the guy who ended up playing Spike's boyfriend, Shane, we all thought he was going to be Joey Jeremiah. He had the looks, he was tall, he was cocky. You know, I'm this short little Italian guy. I thought, Joey Jeremiah, that's a Jewish name. Like, you know, Joey Meatball maybe, I don't know, I could play him. But so they said, no, Joey's mom's Jewish, his dad's Italian or whatever. They said, okay. But I remember getting a phone call after the 3 weeks, and everybody was really nervous and excited at the same time. And I remember the acting coach calling me up saying, so, Pat, did you have a good time doing the workshops? I said, yeah, no, that was a lot of fun. You know, if this is it, I really appreciated the opportunity. This is great. She goes, well, if you're not busy over the summer, we'd like you to play Joey Jeremiah. And I literally lost my mind because my parents were outside in the garden doing the tomatoes and, you know, doing the gardening, and I ran out and I'm like, I got Joey. And that was the role that everybody was hoping to get. And then we continued to do workshops for another week or so where, you know, characters like Yikyu and Arthur were created, and Wheels and other characters were created from that process of the workshops. Like Spike, Amanda Steptoe, who played Spike, that's how she came to the workshops every day with her hair like that. And so they created a character around her actual look and style.
That's what I wanted to ask you. So did you have any leeway in your character design?
I personally didn't have any suggestions or leeway with my character. I do remember countless episodes asking them, can I do this one without the hat? Can I do one without having to wear the fedora? And they're like, no, that's his calling card. That's his shtick. He's got to have the fedora all the time. I'm like, man, you know I'm going to go bald one day if I keep wearing that hat. Now I need the hat and I can't wear it.
No.
But yeah, I mean, they basically looked at us and saw where our strengths were and our weaknesses and would create characters for us that best suited the personality of the person acting the character. Because they knew that in time we would get more confident and better at what we did. Because if you watch Junior High, the first season of Junior High, that's a hard season to watch. We were doing topics like, oh, you got pimples, oh, you got little boobs, oh, you got, you know, we weren't
important, nonetheless.
Yeah, you know, these are things that kids kind of are self-conscious about, and we dealt with those topics, but they weren't the heavy topics that Degrassi High allowed us to tackle. So that's what happened. After a couple of years of Junior High, again, our producer went to the CBC and said, I think we're ready to start getting serious about our storytelling and being able to tackle the topics that the stories that I need to tell to an audience of people that we've now, you know, accumulated in Canada and in the US and other parts of the world. And they gave her that opportunity, which a lot of networks wouldn't have done. You know, I remember when they brought in the script for the AIDS episode, where Dwayne, the bully, ends up finding out that he has HIV. I even remember saying to people, what's HIV? What's AIDS? Like, and they had a couple of gentlemen actually come into our workshop and talk to us about living with AIDS and HIV. Because again, back in the 80s, everybody thought you could get it from sitting on a toilet or shaking someone's hand. And these were not true. And these are the messages that Degrassi wanted to tell. And I just remember being shocked that a kids show was going to be telling a story about such an important topic at that time. And I think we handled it with respect and with, you know, to the audience, and not talk down to the audience, but to educate the audience.
It's the kind of thing that sticks with me. As he's talking about those episodes, are you going, yeah, I totally remember that. Like, I remember the emotions. And it's also the kind of show that now that it's being shown, okay, there are new kids, there are new stories, but they almost not recycle the stories, but they can tell the stories over and it's just as poignant. It's just as interesting.
Yeah, from what I've watched of the next generation over the years, I do see them recycling stories, but that's okay because a lot of these stories are still relevant today.
Yeah.
We live in a generation, obviously, you know, junior high and high, when we did those shows, there was no internet, there were no cell phones, there was no Twitter, Facebook, Instagram. I mean, what a different world we lived in back in the 80s and 90s than what young people are going through today. So I think they're more intense today because I think young people are more savvy.
Yeah.
and they feel like they are more intelligent and more knowledgeable about what's going on, but they still don't have the life experiences to make the right choices. So I think that's what the Next Generation series does, and what the next class does is just remind them that they're still young, they still have a ways to go, you don't know everything, and here's what we think you need to know, but we're going to let you make that decision on whatever it is the topic is for that particular week. We never ever tried to answer questions for people. We just provided an opportunity of options and allowed the young viewer to make their own decision.
It had that feeling of, like, I've just met you, but I feel like I've known you all my life. Because I watched the show and it was like, oh, my buddies are on TV. It had that personal touch. And then when you came back, it was cool because you're only 2 days older than me, by the way. And I watch and I go, cool, he's a dad now. Or, he's that older character. And it was a nice connection.
It was a lot of fun coming back to the Next Generation, because I remember saying to other castmates over the years, wouldn't it be nice to go back and do it again? Knowing what we know now. I mean, I think everybody here in this audience has had said that to themselves. Oh, I wish I could go back in time and do it over again, knowing what I know now. And I got that opportunity with the Next Generation. They allowed me to come back and play a character that I loved playing. Yes, he was older. Yes, maybe he was a little softer. I still tried to make him goofy and fun and likable. But again, it wasn't about Joey and Snake and Caitlin and Spike. It was about this next generation of kids and their stories. We were there to, and how I describe it is, we were there to help the show get its foundation, help the show get its legs. It's very hard for a new show, especially these days with all the options out there, to last more than a season or two. And Degrassi really, really wanted to come back and make an impact like it did in the 80s and 90s. Right. So Linda felt that there was an audience out there, there were more stories to tell. Yeah. How do we bring that audience back? How do we get the people that watched it in the 80s and 90s to come back and watch it with their kids?
Exactly.
And that's why I love coming to Comic-Cons, is because that's who I'm meeting. I'm meeting the parents of the kids that are here, and they're looking at their kids and pointing at me saying, see, that's who Mommy and Daddy watched on TV when we were your age. And I love that. I think it's great. And it's a huge compliment. It's very flattering to be remembered after all these years. It's unbelievable that here I am, I'm 44 years old, and I'm still talking about high school. But if I didn't love it and if I didn't respect it, I wouldn't be doing it. But it is something that I embrace. It is a fond memory. It really was only 5 years. Degrassi Junior High and Degrassi High took place over 5 years. And then we ended it with schools out.
Right. So now, you mentioned coming to Comic-Cons and these events. I'd like to ask if you're a nerd.
That's a good question for my wife.
Is she here?
No, she's not here. But yeah, she'd be the first person to tell you that I'm a man-child. I'm a big nerd. It started out very early. I think just playing a kid on TV and playing someone younger than myself, it just allowed me to enjoy life as a youthful person. I never felt like I ever grew up. In my 20s, I felt as young as I was in my teens. And now in my 30s and 40s, I still feel like I'm in my 20s. I look at Ken's DeLorean over there, and I fondly remember when I owned a DeLorean a few years ago, because Back to the Future was one of my favorite movies growing up, and Michael J. Fox was one of my favorite actors growing up. I still haven't had the pleasure of meeting him, but I emulated him when I was playing Joey Jeremiah, because that's why he had a skateboard. That's why he had this swagger about him, because I basically copied whatever Michael J. Fox did on TV, and I studied him. So I have fond memories and a fond appreciation for the Back to the Future movies, so much so that I bought a DeLorean. And also I love comic books. I'm like many people here growing up, they told their moms not to throw away that box of comics because it's going to be worth a lot of money one day. And I remember telling my mom, look, those 2 boxes are going to be like a lot of money. And then pulling them out, 20 years later, and they're garbage. They're nothing,
But she kept them?
She kept them, but they weren't the ones that really were, they're modern. But I do love comic books. I love the hunt. I love finding them. I love of salvaging them and making sure they don't get thrown out. It's a lot of fun, and I've met a lot of great vendors and a lot of great people over the years. Most of them are here today. And it's a great community, and I love being able to talk to people about things that are other than Degrassi. And people will come up to me and say, oh, you're the guy from Degrassi. I'm like, yeah, but you've got a Fantastic Four #1, right? That's awesome. Like, we start talking about comics. It's great. I love it.
You're wearing a Zit Remedy shirt.
Yes.
Are you yourself musical?
I know 3 chords.
Okay.
C, G, and D. And those were the Zit Remedy
That
chords.
was the song.
People think we remember that song fondly. No, not at all.
I do.
Every time we read in the script, we had read-throughs every week, and every time we would read, Joey Snake Wheels are practicing the Zit Remedy song, everybody would groan. It'd be like, oh, not again, not again, and then we'd be on set, and the crew would be like, not again. Like, so many times we played that one song, but that was the shtick.
That was it.
They were never going to learn another song.
No.
They were never going to be famous. And that is the wonderful aspect of that band, is that all of us can relate to wanting to be bigger than we are and being a star or being successful or having a passion for something. It didn't need to be being a rock band. It could be anything. It could be a tennis player, the best baseball player in the world, and you killed yourself and you tried so hard to get better at something, and it just didn't happen. But it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay that you didn't become a sensation or a superstar or a successful whatever, but you enjoyed the passion, doing it with friends, people you care about, you loved it. And I think that's what people enjoyed about the Zit Remedy was we all knew they sucked, but they believed they were good. And yeah, I mean, the Zit Remedy, I remember it fondly now, but at the time, it was very hard to go through that.
But you hosted a music show.
I did. I had a 10-year variety series on CBC where we promoted and highlighted Canadian bands every week. And we did over 50, 60 episodes over 10 years, and we had some great artists come through. And it was a pleasure and an honor for me to be that guy introducing these new up-and-coming artists in a very intimate live audience setting. It was a lot of fun.
Now, I'll throw it to the audience because I don't want to. Is there anybody who has a question? I just knew it. You guys.
Just raise your hand. Raise your hand if you have a question.
Shy.
Okay, right there. There's a lady with brown hair and glasses. She promised me that she was going to ask me a question.
Do I have to stand up? Okay, hi. So I'm pretty young. I'm 16. Oh, closer?
I did the same
Okay.
thing.
Okay, so I'm 16, so I'm really young. But I remember in grade 7, my teacher used to put on Degrassi Junior High episodes and like teach us from that. So how does it feel to know that your audience doesn't just appeal to one generation, but to so many more?
Okay, I don't know if you guys all heard it, but she said that she's 16 and her teachers use Degrassi in the classroom to help educate a younger generation. And how do I feel about the show being so multi-generational? I think it's awesome. I think it's a compliment to the writing from the 80s that it still holds up today. I watch a lot of shows that I used to love as a kid, like Mork and Mindy and Happy Days and Three's Company, and they're not as funny to me now that I'm an adult, and I don't enjoy them as much as I used to. I used to think the Fonz was so cool, and now I watch Happy Days, I'm like, he's not that cool. It just feels dated. I know Degrassi, to a certain degree, is a little bit dated, but the storytelling and the way it was always character-driven, it was about the characters and not about what they were wearing or the cool music in the background. And, I always compared Degrassi and 90210 because we were on at the same time. Both good shows, and they both did a good job at doing what they were doing, but we were never going to be the beautiful Beverly Hills, well-dressed, high-fashion kids that Beverly Hills represented. And I don't think that was an embodiment of the young people watching it all around the world. I think Degrassi represented most of the young people in Canada and around the world, and how the middle class culture where we all grew up in. And I think young people today can relate to that. Our clothes on the show were pathetic. They're bright colors.
That's what we wore.
But that was it. And I'll tell you another reason why we had really nasty, bright yellow and orange clothing was because they said it looked better on TV. It popped better. And because the show looked really grainy back then, and it was because we shot our episodes on 16 millimeter film, which is a lower grade quality film. 35 millimeters what films were being done in back then. Now everything's digital. But back then, we used 16 millimeter film, which made the show look a little bit more grainy. Like, it's comparing a digital photo to a film photo. You can tell the difference between the two. One is softer. So they always made us look like clowns because they gave us these bright clothes to wear so that when it showed up on TV, it would look better. But yeah, I mean, the show is what it is. It's a representation of a time period that a lot of our generation grew up with, and it's completely flattering that a younger generation can watch it and enjoy it for what it is, and relate to the storylines and relate to the characters. So thanks for your question. The young lady in the Zit Remedy shirt.
Yeah, she has to have a question.
Okay.
That's awesome. Oh my God.
Do you ever rewatch episodes, and what would your favorite episode be?
You know who rewatches the episodes now? My mom and my dad. Every time I go over there, I watched the show today where the Yik Yu goes to the store and he buys the sex tape, and they watch the sex tape. And I get a kick because my mom, obviously, you know, she's got a language barrier, but she loves seeing her son as a little kid because I'm always going to be 16, 14, 8 years old in her eyes. So I get her reminding me of a lot of the old episodes. I don't just sit there with the wife and go, hey, hon, let's watch me on TV tonight. You know?
Why?
I'm very, very shy and awkward about that. I never actually watch. I had to do a self-tape audition the other day where you get a camera at home, you do an audition, you tape it yourself, and then you mail it to the casting agent. I didn't even want to watch it on playback. I did it. I did one take, and I went, good enough. Do you want to watch it? No, I don't want to watch it. Just send it. Because I hate watching myself on camera. My most proud Degrassi moment would definitely be School's Out, because it was a 2-hour storytelling over a summertime, and it was a lot of trials and tribulations, and stuff happened, and women, and excitement. I just feel like as an actor playing a character for so many years that I really peaked with that movie for the character Joey Jeremiah. Like, he was so well-rounded, he was so diverse, he had all this stuff going on, he was very layered. He wasn't so two-dimensional that he was back in the junior high days. So for me, my most proud moment of playing Joey was School's Out, even though he was such a bad boy back then. He was a really bad boy back then, yeah. She forgave him, though, yeah.
Did anybody else have a question? No?
How are we doing for time?
Okay. I have no idea. I'm just chatting. I could sit.
No, we're good.
Okay, we're good. All right, so just to wrap up, clearly, anything that you're doing right now that you want to tell us about?
You know what? A lot of people say, well, what have you done lately? What have you done since Degrassi? Go on IMDb. I've been doing a lot of stuff, actually, in Canada. I moved to Los Angeles for 4 years in my early 20s because I thought that was what every actor was supposed to do. You go down to LA, you always wonder what if. In 1988, I was actually given an opportunity to go down at age 17, 18, and they told me that I was going to have to leave the show if I wanted to stay in Los Angeles. And I said, guys, I can't leave a show that I'm already working on. I haven't even finished high school yet. I can't move down here and be like a Corey Haim or a Corey Feldman. That wasn't what I wanted to do. And then in my late 20s, I was like, man, I really wonder what would have happened if I had gone down there. So I moved to Los Angeles for 4 years. Didn't feel right for me. I didn't really feel like I had a place there. I knew that I could always work in Canada. I knew that I enjoyed working up here. I met my wife up here, and she was staying in Toronto when I was living in Los Angeles. So my heart was kind of back in Toronto. I wanted to go home and be with my girlfriend, who eventually became my wife. So I did. I came back in the late 90s and started working here in Toronto and loving every minute of it. And now I'm actually on my way to South Africa next month to shoot a movie down there. I've never actually done anything like that before, where I got casted for a part so far away, but that's how things are done these days. I worked on a movie with Brooke Shields this spring. You know, I worked on Suits and Dark Matter and
Yeah,
Bitten.
lots of Canadian, good
you know,
Canadian programming.
A lot of good Canadian shows. I love the fact that Canadian television, even though it's co-production with American networks, shows like Bitten and Beauty and the Beast, and they look great now. They don't have that Canadian TV look anymore. We've gone well past it. We're well beyond it. Our cast and crews can match anything that the States can do. And we should be proud of our Canadian content and support it, obviously.
100%.
Yep.
Thank you so much. Everybody,
Thank you,
a big
guys.
round of applause. Thank you.